to take it on. Oh, he excels on contemplative projects. Look, can we hurry this up? There are dozens of angels waiting to talk to me. I'm extremely busy.
Who did Carousel work with? Who would have been the last to see him alive?
You could talk to Sir Raguel, I suppose. He was his partner, after all. Now, if you'll excuse me...
He returned to his swarm of aides, advising, correcting, suggesting, forbidding.
Who has the giraffe pattern?
Hey, did you see that?
What?
Over there by that car, a jackal. Coyote. Damn if I know what they're coming to the city for. Good story, huh?
I've never heard anything like it.
Okay. So, I went to talk to the dead angel's partner. Sir Raguel was in the highest of the mezzanine galleries that ring the Hall of Being. As I said, the universe was in the middle of the hall, and it glinted and sparkled and shone. It went up quite a way, too.
The universe you mentioned, it was what, a diagram? I don't quite understand.
No, not really. It's kind of... sort of. It was a blueprint, but it was full-sized, and it hung in the hall, and all these angels went around, and they fiddled with it all the time. They were doing stuff with gravity and music and clar and whatever. But it wasn't really the universe, not yet. It would be when it was finished, and it was time for it to be properly named.
I'm sorry. I really don't see...
Well, don't worry about it. Think of it as a model, if that makes it easier for you, or a map, or what's the word? Prototype. Yeah, Model T Ford Universe. You got to understand, a lot of the stuff I'm telling you, I'm translating already. I'm putting in a form you can understand. Otherwise, I couldn't tell the story at all. Look, you want to hear it, or you want to keep asking questions?
I want to hear it.
Good, so shut up and listen. So I met Sir Raguel in the topmost gallery. There was no one else about, just him, and some papers, and some small glowing models. I've come about Carousel.
Carousel isn't here at this time, I'm afraid. I expect him to return shortly.
Carousel won't be coming back. He stopped existing as a spiritual entity.
He's dead?
That's what I said. Do you have any ideas about how it happened?
This is so sudden. I mean, he'd been talking about... But I had no idea that he would... Well, take it on to the next step.
He got up and walked to the window. There was no view of the Silver City from his window, just a reflected glow from the city and the sky behind us, hanging in the air. And beyond that, the dark. The wind from the dark gently caressed Sir Raguel's hair as he spoke. I stared at his back and listened.
Carousel is... No. Was. That's right, isn't it? Was. He was always so involved and so creative, but it was never enough for him. He always wanted to understand everything, to experience what he was working on. He was never content to just create it, to understand it intellectually. He wanted all of it.
All of it?
Yes. That wasn't a problem before when we were working on properties of matter. But when we began to design some of the named emotions, he got too involved with his work. And our latest project was death. It's one of the hard ones. One of the big ones, too, I suspect. Possibly, it may even become the attribute that's going to define the creation for the created. If not for death, they'd be content to simply exist. But with death, well, their lives will have meaning. A boundary beyond which the living cannot cross.
So you're saying you think he killed himself?
I know he did. That's him, isn't it?
Excuse me?
The white and red dot on the sidewalk down there? Is that Carousel?
I believe so.
How can they just leave him there like that?
Someone will clean up the mess.
Who?
I don't know who. But there will be an angel whose function it is to remove things that are unwanted. My function is discovery and vengeance. So how do you know that Carousel killed himself?
How? There's no other possible explanation. Look, recently he'd begun asking questions. Questions about death. How could we know whether or not it was right to make this thing, to set the rules, if we were not going to experience it ourselves? He kept talking about it.
Didn't you wonder about this? Weren't you concerned?
Not in the slightest. That is our function, to discuss, to improvise, to aid the creation and the created. We sort it out now so that when it all begins, it'll run like clockwork. Right now we're working on death, so obviously that's what we look at. The physical aspect, the emotional aspect, the philosophical aspect.
So that was what Carousel was working on?
That and the patterns. Carousel had the notion that what we do here in the Hall of Being creates patterns. That there are structures and shapes appropriate to beings and events that, once begun, must continue until they reach their end. For us, perhaps as well as for them. Conceivably, he felt this was one of his patterns.
I see, I think. Did you know Carousel well?
As well as any of us know each other. We saw each other here. We worked side by side. At certain times, I would retire to my cell across the city. Sometimes he would do the same.
Tell me about Fanuel.
The boss? Honestly, he's officious. Doesn't do much. Farms everything out and takes all the credit. To hear him talk, you'd think that love was all his own work. But to his credit, he does make sure the work gets done. Zefkiel's the real thinker of the two senior designers, but he doesn't come here. He stays back in his cell in the city and contemplates, resolves problems from a distance. If you need to speak to Zefkiel, you go to Fanuel, and Fanuel relays your questions to Zefkiel.
How about Lucifer? Tell me about him.
Lucifer? The captain of the host? He doesn't work here. He has visited the hall a couple of times, though, inspecting the creation. They say he reports directly to the name. I have never spoken to him.
Did he know Carousel?
I doubt it. As I said, he has only been here twice. I have seen him on other occasions, though. Through the window over there. In flight. On his way somewhere.
Where was he going?
I don't know.
It's beautiful, isn't it? The city from this height. And the darkness beyond the city.
Yes. It's beautiful. It's all there is.
I may want to talk with you some more later.
Very good. Sir, do you know if they will be assigning me another partner for death?
No, I'm afraid I don't. In the center of the Silver City was a park, a place of recreation and rest. I found the angel Lucifer there beside a river. He was just standing, watching the water flow. Lucifer.
Raguel, are you making progress?
I don't know. Maybe. I need to ask you a few questions. Do you mind?
Not at all.
How did you come upon the body?
I didn't. Not exactly. I saw Fanuel standing in the street. He looked distressed. I inquired whether there was something wrong, and he showed me the dead angel. And I fetched you.
I see.
The water's so cold. Is that all?
Not quite. What were you doing in that part of the city?
I don't see what business that is of yours.
It is my business, Lucifer. What were you doing there?
I was walking. I do that sometimes. Just walk and think and try to understand.
You walk on the edge of the city?
Yes.
That's all I want to know. For now.
Who else have you talked to?
Carousel's boss and his partner. They both feel that he killed himself, ended his own life.
Who else are you going to talk to?
Maybe everyone.
All of them? There must be thousands of us, millions. You would speak to each of us?
If I need to. It's my function. I cannot rest until I understand what happened. and until the vengeance of the name has been taken on whoever was responsible. But I'll tell you something I do know.
What would that be?
Carousel didn't kill himself.
How do you know that?
I am vengeance. If Carousel had died by his own hand, there would have been no call for me, would there? He did not reply. I flew upwards into the light of the eternal morning.